Previous guest writes the first question. You have the envelope, sir. I'm going to turn it over to you.
What would you say is your legacy that you will leave behind? Swinging for the fences right off the bat.
Say, wow.
Well, when I consider my legacy, my military career is only a piece of it. So I guess I would answer...
Depends on what perspective you're looking at it from.
Correct. I would say for my legacy in my military career would be that I took care of the men and women that I served with. That's what I would hope it would be. I would hope it would be that I left fingerprints and a little piece of my DNA on the war fighters of the next generation. My military career cannot define me for the rest of my life.
There's a lot of people who try to, though.
Right. So the second answer would be, what would my ultimate legacy be? I guess that I cared more for others than I cared for myself, maybe. And that's something that I need to work on every day. It's something that I want to do better at.
Well, also on the opposite side of that, though, is if you get so wrapped up into caring for others, there is a point, and some people might say, oh, that's just being selfish. But there is a point that you have to care for yourself first. You are always the most vital piece. It's the air mask in an airplane analogy. You're not doing anybody any good if you're not taking care of yourself. So it's that catch-22. Yeah, you want to take care of other people, but I think a lot of us get so wrapped up in looking at what others need, we forget to go, wait a minute, I got to take care of myself too.
Absolutely. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else around you. If you can't learn to love yourself, can you really honestly love anybody else? It's up for debate, but it's also not a love for yourself is also not a destination. I think it's something that you need to constantly work at. You need to temper that. You need to feed it with positive stuff, with learning gratitude. This is something that I'm focusing a lot of attention on now, is the gratitude piece. How your life and how your day goes literally is conducted by your thoughts, and your thoughts about yourself.
You spent how many years total in the Marine Corps?
I did 24 years and 6 months, so 24 and a half years.
And you're out how long now?
I retired in December of 2021.
So with basically coming up on 5 years removed from it, when you think about that what's coming to mind with that legacy question for me is, how might you today deal with your junior Marines in talking about their legacy? Do you think just in that 5 years, you have a different perspective on how you would look at teaching them about their legacy, even beyond the Marine Corps?
Absolutely. I think that I have a different perspective on dang near everything in the last 5 years. I've learned a lot about myself in retirement. Some things I like, some things I hated. And not to go too far down the rabbit hole of what's going on currently, but I used to talk about this a lot with my Marines and have these discussions. The younger generation coming through, when I was a senior enlisted leader, these younger young men and women grew up through the GWAT, through the Global War on Terror. And so their idea of what military service was, or what we were doing overseas, was that. And I used to talk about it like, that's not going to be the next fight. It's going to be a lot more advanced. And it's pretty easy to roll in and out of this combat zone when you know you have total air superiority. Well, what happens when you don't have that, right? Along those same lines, to answer your question, is, Marines pride themselves on, and it's part of kind of our recruiting shtick, is that, you give us your son or daughter, we're going to make them a Marine, we're going to make them tough, we're going to make them mentally and physically resilient, and then we're going to give you back a better citizen. And that's our deal with the American people, with the American government. And I think that if you look at your service, like that's the end all be all, this is what I was meant to do on this planet, and there's not really anything beyond. I've had these thoughts. Then you're not even looking at a sliver of the full picture of life in general. And how much of a disservice are you paying to your family and your friends by having that type of an attitude, and to your actual legacy, to what you actually want to look back on your life and say, hey, so what did I do? What did I accomplish? Well, great. What did you accomplish? You won this award, or you earned this medal, or you did this. So what? That's okay. Whose life did you affect? Whose life did you save, whether figuratively or literally, or those are the things that really matter. And if you're a person of faith, did you put your faith first? The way you lived your career, the way you lived your adult life, you had to put something first. And if you're a person of faith, regardless of what that faith is, you led with that, hopefully, throughout your career. You have that guiding light to kind of show you the ins and outs, to show you where you're getting off track, to show you, maybe something just doesn't feel right about this. I need to operate a little bit differently. You need to trust your family, because when they call you out on something.
Family doesn't do that.
No, it only happened to me, right? So when they call you out on something, it's not because they're angry at you or they hate you. It's quite the opposite. It's because they love you.
Well, they get to see behind the curtain every single day of your life. You can't fool them with the masks that we like to wear to the general public. The people who get to see us for a couple hours, you're rarely going to get the image with the mask off. Your family knows the real you, and they're not going to put up with your garbage. The reason why this question's sticking with me, and I enjoy this part of it because I like to kind of walk myself through the question also. And sometimes that's what prompts my questions back. And the reason why I specifically asked how you would treat your young Marines today is because the longer that I'm away from my career, yeah, there's certain aspects of stuff that I miss that I did. But when I see what the status or the condition of the way the law enforcement community is today, I'm drawn to, I feel like I want to talk to that young guy or that young girl that's either just coming in or a couple years into it, and trying to tell them, hey, this is just a blip on the radar. If you do this career long enough, you're going to go through peaks and valleys. Ride it, but there's so much negativity out there today. But you brought up something that's interesting. What's going on right now is proving to you that how GWOT was fought is not going to be, for the most part, how combat's going to be anymore. And preparing those young Marines to open their eyes and go, stop looking at just today. Think about a year from now, 5 years from now. How are you going to be impacted by it? And what will you be able to impact in the future?
I always thought it was important when I was a senior enlisted leader to impart a certain amount of geopolitics into what I would discuss with the younger Marines, or not even the younger Marines, the middle management, if you will, or the sergeants or staff sergeants. I took a particular interest in my sergeants, my E5s, when I was an infantry battalion sergeant major. And I spent a lot of time with them. And I think it almost to the point where it annoyed them. But I loved those guys. And I thought that in an infantry battalion, I looked at that like the sergeants were really the nucleus. And to really, I looked at them like they were my link to what was going on in the barracks. So you got the higher headquarters of a battalion, and then you have what's really going on a Friday night in your battalion. That's what's really going on. Not what you see in the PT field or out in the field, right? So I thought they were my link to that. And so if I have something that I want to impose or something that I want to get across, I got really good at putting my fingers on the pulse of a battalion, of a unit, and being like, where's the morale and why? And so, of course, you think back to when you were young. Well, what really demoralized me? It's when leaders just made decisions without including us in the process, without respecting what we had to offer, without, the whole, when I came in, I did what you told me to do because of who you are and who you represent, and I didn't question. I think you've had this conversation with a few people. And then the millennial generation, the Y generation, whatever we want to call them, they ask questions. And I remember we literally had a class on this in 2009, the first time I went to officer candidate school to be an instructor.
Good coffee is important, but where it comes from matters also. Blue Line Roasting is a Tennessee-based, law enforcement-owned company. They're roasting small batches of premium coffee, fresh within 48 hours of your order. Whole bean or pre-ground, and shipped fast to you. It's great coffee that shows up ready for you to enjoy. But it's what your purchase does for others that makes it so much more. A portion of every order goes to support law enforcement families dealing with the impact of line-of-duty injury or loss. So you get a great cup of coffee, and a family gets support. Order a single bag, try a sampler pack, or start a subscription so it's there when you need it. Oh, there's another perk. Shipping is always free. And for listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Go to bluelineroasting.com and stand behind a company that stands with those who serve.
And they had this whole class about, the first time I heard the term millennial, it's like, this millennial, and they get a whole class about how the learning styles are different from previous generations, et cetera, et cetera. So you're talking about a generation that was raised on the internet, whereas I think this is literally true. The first time I got on a computer, I was an E5 in the Marine Corps. I was a sergeant. Like, first time I got on an internet, first time I had an email was when I was an E5. And so, the information that we required, we had to ask it of somebody, or we had to go find it in a library, or we listened to something on TV maybe, but that's how we got our information. Now, it's literally in the palm of your hand. And so if in 1995, I'm a teenager and I ask my father something, that's gospel. I kind of look back on that and I have a few examples in my head of times when I asked those questions and my dad, this is the way it is. This is the answer to your question. And he was wrong, but it doesn't matter. I still to this day believe it because it's my dad in this one, right?
He was the Encyclopedia Britannica.
That's right. Then you have these younger young men and women that are coming in, asking questions about what's going on, and senior leaders, my peers and the like, would get really frustrated with that. I found myself kind of aligning with them because I found myself annoying some of my leaders and some of my peers asking similar questions. Like, the answer was always, well, once you get up to this level, you'll understand once you get there. And I got to be honest, I got there and I still didn't understand a lot of it. It just didn't make a lot of sense. Some of it did, of course.
Well, that's the catch-22. We've got so much information at our fingertips, but which of it is verified? Which of it is accurate? So then you got to start playing detective and go, okay, I'm going to read a little bit over here. I'm going to read a little bit over here. And maybe at some point in time, there'll be enough nuggets of all of them that I go, okay, here's a relatively centered, not truth, but just a centered, accurate account of what's going on. But yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We've got the access to so much more information, but there's so much more now that you don't know if it's true or not.
That's right. Yeah, I was on.
And then don't mix AI into it.
Well, that's exactly kind of what I'm talking about. It's not just what's really going on the other side of the planet, but there's a war out there for your brain. There's a war going on right now for your attention and your opinion. You know, trying to pull you in every different direction.
We are the lab rats in their maze.
That's right. It's 100% true. You can deny that all you want. You can pretend that it's not the deal. You can stick your head in the sand. And
I think that what makes it scary is when you look to the left and the right, meaning your friends, your family and stuff, and you start seeing the people that you're close to that you maybe give them a pass. Maybe you kind of assumed a little bit more, and they fall into the rabbit hole, and you kind of go, do you not see how deep you're going into that rabbit hole? And you're buying it hook, line, and sinker. Yeah. And I'm not saying not to believe in information, but have a little bit of skepticism about what's being thrown at you.
Yes.
And so I think for me, that's the one thing that really kind of is the barometer, is when you see the people that are close to you buying into it or just going down that rabbit hole. That's when you kind of go, okay, now I see how it manipulates people.
Correct. That's the correct word for it. I think that manipulation that is occurring is just right out in the open, and they're doing it without even trying to hide it anymore, because that's how wrapped up we are into that rat maze that you just described.
The other thing, going back to that barrage of information, yes, information's good, and it's good to be aware of what's going on. But there are some aspects where if you didn't pick up your phone this morning and you just went outside and drank your cup of coffee and did what you needed to do today, would anything else going on in the world really be an impact to you? But we have to be nosy. We want to be that person looking through the blinds going, what's going on out there? And it drives us. And then what does it do? It drives that algorithm of what it feeds you. So remember that what you're getting on your phone, if it's pissing you off, you're in total control of it.
Exactly. Yep. I have a Twitter X whatever account, but I am not active on it. I have it.
I love the fact that even today, and it's been, 3 years now, they
Twitter. Still
have to say X, formerly Twitter.
I don't like saying X. I don't know what to tell you. But I have an account, but I noticed that I do not open it on my phone. I don't. And if I do look at it, I can only look at it for like 5 to 10 minutes, if that, because I start getting pissed off. And so there's your signal that, again, that I'm working on here. Like, okay, how am I being manipulated? This is funny. Jimmy May talks about this, right? I can't remember when, it may have been years ago, but I think it was Jimmy May. He talks about, he does his dad drops. And he talked about, something along the lines of, I'm not quoting here, I'm paraphrasing, but if I'm going to sit down with my kids and watch TV, we watch a series of commercials or something like that, and I'm going to stop. And I go, how did that commercial, in what way was it trying to manipulate you? He says something along those lines. And I think it was years ago that he did something on LinkedIn or something. And I'm like, huh. And I started doing that, and it's infuriating. So I can't watch commercials in general. And so I have to limit those things. But I have a pretty much fully developed brain. What about that 17-year-old or even that 21 or 22-year-old? It's got to be it's hard enough to be a kid in general growing up. But with this constant barrage, it's got to be incredibly challenging.
Well, let's use that as a springboard to take you back to being a kid. Where'd you grow up? Where were you born? What's your family dynamics like?
I was born in just outside of Denver, Colorado, a place called Lakewood, Colorado. Grew up in the foothills of Colorado. Pretty normal upbringing. Had a great father, a good mother that had kids at an early age and just went all in on being a mother. We didn't have a whole lot, my dad had to work very hard my entire upbringing just to keep the household running.
What kind of work did he do?
He did a lot of different things. My earliest memory of him was working construction jobs with other guys that would be family friends or people that we would go to church with and the like. And people would throw him an odd job here and there or whatever, construction wise. But I remember times of him being, unemployed for weeks or even months at a time. But he always figured it out. I have a sister. So my sister's 2 years older than me. Incredibly smart woman. I think we probably had your average.
Are you trying to say because she came first, she stole all the brains?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it.
Went back for seconds.
Yeah. We had the basic probably squabbles between a brother and sister, but as we grow older, as what I think naturally happens as you grow older, you grow closer. She actually currently lives in Europe. She does work for, I think it's Ubisoft, and she works in the video game industry, and she's done that for many, many years, and she's tremendous. Love her to pieces. My father still lives back in Colorado in the same house that I grew up in, same area. Try to get back to see him at least.
A lot of family roots in Colorado, grandparents, aunts, uncles, that stuff?
Correct, yes. Yep. So had, like I said, a pretty good upbringing and grew up in the 80s and then into the 90s, was a teenager in the 90s. And my father in the 90s started getting, he worked. Let me back up. My father's a Vietnam veteran. He was in the Navy in Vietnam. He did like 2 or 3 years in the Navy. He came in he wanted to be an electrician, likes working with his hands. He's smart, like things like that. I said, okay, yeah, no problem. And then they said, no, you're going to go work on a boiler. You're going to work in the boiler room in a ship. And so he worked on the USS Oriskany during Vietnam, the same ship that McCain was on. And he still has pictures and stuff like that. And he was so mad. He was so mad that he got that. That's not an easy job. I mean, so it's tough enough working on a ship, but you're working in the bowels of the ship and it's like 120 degrees down there the whole time, It's like, he hated it. He was so mad. He's like, I wanted to get a transferable skill, and what's funny is there's a certain point, I can't remember what year it was, but where he landed a very lucrative job, I think working at either Rocky Flats or the Rocky Mountain Arsenal because of his experience on those boilers. But that wasn't realized until like 20 years later, 20 plus. And then he got a job working on an atoll out in the Pacific called the Johnson Atoll, where they're disposing of nuclear weapons. And so he had this really cool job based upon that experience in the Navy, and he got a clearance and all that. And he did well out there for himself. That was when he was working there, was my last couple of years in high school. And so it was just me, my mom. My sister had pretty much left.
Did your sister go to Europe right out of high school?
No.
Oh.
No, my sister did a lot of things. She actually spent a lot of time in California. She married a guy, moved out to California. That was another reason why I love it out here. My sister was there, and she, had a kid, raised a kid out here, and saw this opportunity to go to Europe, and she loves it over there. She would take a trip to Europe every year, so she's like, "Oh my God, I'm taking advantage of this." So she took it. There's been bumps in the road. The job she went out there for didn't work, but now it's working in a different direction, But she's doing great. But the last couple of years when I was in high school, I kind of tried to play high school football. I did 2 seasons of high school football. I wasn't very good. It was fun. I wasn't very good. I was okay.
The scouts weren't coming.
No. So I was pretty good at playing Nerf football, in the park, but actual football, I wasn't that great, but I played in a few games. They threw me a bone here and there, It was fun. But like, I don't like high school. I'm not really digging this. And I think in my junior year, I see this recruiter at the high school.
Prior to that point, what kind of conversations were you having with mom and dad about your future?
I think it revolved. There's no money for college. So if you're going to go to college, you're paying your own way. So this Marine recruiter, and I'm like, I go talk to this guy and he just completely dismisses me. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I start talking to him. He's like, what? Well, just, hey, what's up, man? You got a pamphlet or something? First of all, it's not man. What year are you? I'm a junior. He's like, go away. Come talk to me when you're a senior.
You can't fulfill my quotas right now.
Which is true. But he knew exactly what he was doing. So I was like, oh hell no. Oh, really? And so I pursued him. I kept pursuing him. And so that's the thing. People always talk, oh, my recruiter lied to me. My recruiter didn't lie to me. And I told people this even when I was a young Marine. I'm like, your recruiter lied to you? You didn't see any of this coming? Like, I did. So I pursued him. He had to come talk to my family because I was not 18 yet. And so that went about how you would expect it to go. My mother was apprehensive about it, of course. But
what year was it at this point?
That was 96.
Okay.
So I made the decision in the summer of my junior year, going into my senior year, that I was going to join. I went down to MEPS and I joined the delayed entry program, and this is a 17-year-old kid,
Ever consider any of the other branches?
No. Like, I did that once. This is funny. I went into the recruiter office one time and I waved at my recruiter through the window and went back to the Air Force. And I just said, hey, man, I was just wondering if you have anything. And my recruiter came in there and was like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, I just wanted to talk. He's like, get out of here. He's like, he was messing with you. He was telling the Air Force, hey, he's messing with you. No, I tell people, I didn't join the military. I joined the Marines. And call that whatever you want to call it. If you want to join the military and you want to get college and you're kind of smart, then go to the Air Force. Like, Air Force is great. Fantastic. If you kind of don't mind being on a ship and, living the life like that or whatever, then go do that, whatever, and you get money on the back end for college or whatever. If you're too dumb for the Air Force, then go join the Army. I'm just kidding. Don't get mad at me. But I mean, there are easier ways to get free college. I'll just say that. So I was very, very gung-ho, if you will, about what I was doing and why I was doing it. A better than average GT score, better than average, I guess, ASVAB is what they call it. And so,
with your dad's experiences in the Navy, more your time growing up prior to having the recruiter come to the house, was he a proponent of, hey, consider the military, or was he kind of anti, like, don't go towards the military in general?
I think he's neutral. I think because he's a good, God-fearing, American that supports the military. And so, of course, he supports the military.
I wasn't saying like not supporting the military, no. The military for you, or being his son, taking his experiences like, no, don't go that route. Or was he saying like, no, you should go consider it?
Well, it's funny you should ask that because it's a true story. When I first started talking to him about it, we kind of have this back and forth. And again, this was one of the times where he was working on that island. He would be out there for like 2 months and then come back for a month or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And so I started talking to him about it. And so we kind of go back and forth, and he goes, you're not going to join the Marines. Why? Because you don't like being told what to do. So what did I do? I joined the Marines. I don't like him telling me what to do. So I joined this cult that all they do is tell you what to do. Yeah, that tells you a little bit about my personality when I was 17 years old, I suppose.
And what was your MOS going in?
So yeah, I decided to go in as a communicator. You know, you kind of see the pictures in the recruiter's office. And again, this is 1996. And I went to boot camp in 1997. And it's kind of like, you know, if you're a communications guy, you're going to get this. You're going to scratch that itch of getting out in the field and shooting and doing all that stuff. But you're also going to gain the skill. And so, you know, that's something that could be transferable out in the real world. And it's true. It's true. And so that was my mentality. And I got into it. You'll go to boot camp in 1997. Unfortunately, like halfway through boot camp, and this is very, very odd. I've never seen it since. I get called in the middle of boot camp. I get called into the drill instructor's office because I have a phone call. That doesn't happen. And so I have drill instructor, series chief drill instructor, and like a series officer or somebody in this room, like staring at me while I pick up this phone. Yes, it's my recruiter. And I'm like, okay, what's wrong? And so he goes, listen, your parents are getting a divorce. I wanted to let you know because they wanted to keep it a secret. Your mom wanted to keep it a secret or something like that. But I want to let you know. But you got to stay focused out there. And he kind of gave me this thing. And so he kind of was looking out for me. And of course, I'm kind of, you know, getting a little bit emotional. But I kind of had saw this coming. But I didn't think they would do it while I was in boot camp, you know. But I still, to this day, don't know all the details surrounding it because I had to focus on what I was doing and things happened while I wasn't there. Well, and I would imagine myself included, anybody listening to you tell that story, they're not thinking that phone call is going to be good. No.
They're, you know, nothing that could have waited is going to be pushed through.
That's right. So I hang up the phone and the series gunnery sergeant, I still remember this guy. I still remember his voice. He, you know, now you look at me, young man. And he gets really stern with me. And he's like, you're going to keep training. You're going to continue to train. And I was like, yes, sir. You know, and I kind of run off back to the squad bay and I'm all upset or whatever. But you picture, you finish boot camp and I'm going to go back for 10 days after boot camp on leave. And it's going to be great. And everybody's going to be there to, no, you know, and I mean, there are worse problems to have, but I didn't really have that. So I kind of anticipated that, plan on that. I really, even that point in boot camp, I really kind of determined that I was going to be fiercely independent, you know, as a young 18-year-old. And this is the correct trajectory. This is the correct path. You know, if I'm going to be independent because I have a source of income, I have a job that's very sturdy, consistent, and all I have to do is just show up and do my best. And then everything else will come after that and we'll figure it all out.
Before the divorce announcement, well, did either of them come to your graduation? And would they have planned to come to your graduation had they not gotten divorced, to your knowledge?
It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Yes, I had family come to the graduation. And this is horrible. But I don't remember which one, but it wasn't both. And I don't remember, again, it's horrible. I don't remember which came. My grandparents on my father's side came. I remember that. Fast forward 4.5 years, I did a graduation from that same exact place as a drill instructor, and my dad came. So yeah, I think what happened was my mother came out for my boot camp graduation and one of my high school friends, and my father came out for my DI school graduation. I think that's how that worked out.
Going back to the conversation with Dad, you're not going to join the Marine Corps. You don't like to be told what to do. How was it for you to get into boot camp and actually being told what to do? What was the bigger motivator in the sense of, I'm not saying quitting was even on your mind, but in the sense, was the motivation more, I'm not going to prove my dad right, so I'm going to muscle through this?
Maybe. thinking back on it, I don't think that's the way I looked at it at the time. I remember my rack mate, maybe 2 weeks in or something like that. We're doing some sort of something where the drone instructor happens to not be right there. And he's like, hey, man, let's get out of here. Like,
where are we going to go?
I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, let's go, man. I can't do this anymore. And I had never even thought about it. I was like, maybe I was just too dumb to quit. and that's entirely possible. But I remember thinking, I still to this day, I have very few memories of boot camp, and that's one of them. Hey, man, let's get out of here. I can't do this. I was like, what? Where you going to run across the runway? Like, they'll get you. And you're already not in that great shape, I want to say. So it never really dawned on me. I never felt pressure that I was going to let somebody down, I guess. I think, other than myself. That's really the beginning. I go to communications school right out here in 29 Palms, and then I am, a field radio operator. So so what is that? Well, you're a battery operated grunt, So I learned these basic radios, and these are archaic radios, literally Vietnam era stuff,
Small and lightweight?
No. And, but they say, okay, well, we have to take half of this class or some people from your class with a certain capability, ASVAB score GT, to go over here and do this multi-channel communications job, which you got to learn this first, and then you go learn this multi-channel. And they chose me. And so they picked me to go. And I was one of like 6 or 7 or something like that. I don't remember. So I go, and it was great. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is much better because this is a much bigger, you can't carry this. You have to put it in a vehicle. So this will probably be a little bit more comfortable. I remember thinking that. Boy, was I wrong.
The ponderings of the 18-year-old mind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I figured this out.
Yeah, I remember, because it kind of stinks. You're entry-level guy or whatever. And one or two of the students in our class for the multi-channel were reservists. And I remember thinking, what the hell is that? They never told me about being a reservist, And I remember this kid telling me, there are 2 types of Marines, reservists and those who wish they were reservists. And I remember thinking, I don't think I agree with you, whatever. But there's always part of you as an 18-year-old kid, just like, I'll go do this, and then I'm going to go home because that's comfort. That's comfortable. Go over there. And so, of course, most of my class, at the end of that class, got orders to Okinawa. So go to Okinawa, 3rd Marine Division, communications company. And it's only a year tour at that point. And I wasn't really happy about being that far away from home, but I get out there and I fell in love with the place. That was great. Kind of bounced all over the Pacific doing these exercises, and I never really fell in love with the job. I never really liked the job too much, but I gained a skill, but I didn't really care for the job too much. But it was fun being out there in the Pacific. And so it comes time for me to make a decision on this reenlistment. What am I going to do?
Let me take you backwards real quick on that one. You made the comment of after you went home after boot camp, mom and dad are divorced, you kind of had your own moment of, all right, I'm going to be fiercely independent. But when you signed initially, were you thinking 4 years, I'm out, I'm just doing this as a speed bump, so to speak?
Yes. I didn't know exactly, but that was the rationale. It's like, I have this skill set now. I have this experience. There's my little launching pad to go out and to do something, maybe in the communications world or something like that.
Is your enlistment right before 9/11?
Exactly. So This is in 2000. I start thinking about this in late 2000. I have to make a decision because my end of active service would be June of 2001. So I have to make this decision. So I'm in the unit. I'm a sergeant at that point, it was pretty good to get promoted to sergeant before 4 years at that time. But I tell my company commander, really like this guy to this day. I still remember this guy named Tom Douye. And I tell him during the interviews that you're required to do and stuff before you get out, he's like, well, what is it going to take for you to stick around? I said, well, sir, I don't want any orders to any special duties. The only reason I'll stick around is if I could be a drill instructor. Because this is pre 9/11. The only cool things to do in the Marine Corps was to go on a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, or Marine Security Guard, or go be a drill instructor. Like those were just kind of what the cool kids did in the 90s. And so I'll be a drill instructor.
Are you saying the recruiters aren't the cool kids?
That's correct. No, don't come at me. No.
You want to think about the answer?
No. I have tremendous amount of respect and always have for recruiters, especially with my experience with my recruiter. Just a really one-off type of recruiter, and with whom I still have contact to this day. I still know this guy to this day. How often does that happen? You literally remain friends with your drill instructor.
Well, everybody else, the recruiters lied to him, so
that's right.
They don't want to do any contact with him.
It's crazy. Like my recruiter pinned my first sergeant chevrons onto my collar, one of them onto my collar when I got promoted. Like he retired as a gunny and promoted me to first sergeant. It was kind of cool. Anyway, so yeah, I submit a drill instructor package and it comes back promptly denied. I'm like, no, the MOS is too thin. We need him to stay in the MOS. Then there's an argument. It escalates to the battalion commander. The battalion commander takes whatever Major Douye does, Captain Douye, whatever, and sends it up to Headquarters Marine Corps. Headquarters Marine Corps denies it again. I get called in the battalion commander's office. We're walking up the hill to go to the commanding general's office. I'm like, what is happening? Get up there, and I've already kind of resigned myself that I'm just going to get out. And so go into the general's office, totally wild. Is that guy real? Go into his office and 2-star makes a phone call. I don't remember exactly how this goes. Says something to the colonel. I said, you'll have orders in 2 days or something like that. So 2 days later, I go up to the battalion commander's office. I walk in, I report in as you're supposed to. And he walks around his desk and goes to a printer and picks up a piece of paper off a printer and hands it to me. And it's an email printed out. And this email's from Headquarters Marine Corps that says, we will, let him go to drill instructor duty, but don't blame us when he doesn't get promoted. So the colonel hands that to me. I read it. I look up at him and he goes, I want you to call me when you get promoted to staff sergeant. Aye, sir. And face about smartly and exit, and I go to drill instructor school.
When it comes to sunglasses, first responders and military members definitely don't baby them. They get dropped, thrown in a utility pocket, or tossed in gear bags. Frontline Optics was created for that reality. You get premium eye protection without paying designer brand prices for something that won't survive your lifestyle. From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective coatings and a water-repellent finish, every pair is designed to handle long days, harsh conditions, and real work. And here's where Frontline Optics separates themselves from the pack. When life happens and your glasses break, they offer a no-questions-asked replacement program, even for prescription glasses. On top of that, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every purchase goes to support the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping families of those who gave everything. So if you're looking for sunglasses that look good, are built tough, and come from a company that actually understands the job, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines.
Get out to San Diego, go to drill instructor school. It was incredible. It was challenging, of course. Similarly, those thoughts of quitting and stuff like that never really were there. But I did get injured once or twice. And I thought, crap, I can't get dropped. A company commander, a battalion commander, and a division commander went out on a ledge for me. So I can't screw this up, right? So I did well in DI school. I don't remember. I finished in like the top 5 or something like that. And
how common is it being there with 4 or 5 years in?
It was pretty common. I'd say about half of us were, only just starting our second enlistment, because this is your reenlistment incentive, is to go to drill instructor school.
Got it.
The same time, there's a recruiting school going on literally just down the road. A few guys from our class kind of mysteriously disappeared and then all of a sudden reappeared one day on a Friday wearing blue trousers. And you're like, hey, yeah, you're not going to be a drill instructor. You'd be better being nice to the kids. So, yep. So we're finished with drill instructor school, kind of getting ready to graduate drill instructor school. Graduating on September 12th. And so the morning of September 11th, we had sword turn in. So you get issued a sword and you got to turn in all your stuff now. Sword turn in went at like 5:30. And so I just remember standing in a line, and then one of the instructors coming up and says, everybody get downstairs into the classroom right now. Cruise missiles are impacting the Pentagon, or something like this. Something crazy. And we're like, holy cow. So we all go down to this classroom. And I don't remember exactly how all that went, but it was in real time as the planes were impacting. And I can't remember exactly how it all went, but I remember going back to my room. I think they let us go for a certain amount of time because people had their families there and stuff. So go back to my room, turn on the TV. I think this is how I remember it. As I turn on the TV is when the second plane strikes the tower. Strikes the second tower. And right then I knew, because even when I got my drone instructor orders, after that I was like, yeah, I'm done. There's nothing else. I don't want to go back to being a comm guy. I don't want to do that anymore. So I remember looking at the TV and going, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my adult life. We're at war. So giddy up. Problem is, you just started a 3-year tour on the drill field. You're not going to war. It's like, oh, so many of us, all of us, I think all of us would be willing to forfeit and go back to the fleet to get involved. I think all of us, many of us did submit AA forms, and that's futile. You're not going to do that. You're not going anywhere, stud. And so I ended up doing extra time on the drill field as a drill instructor. What ends up happening naturally is the progression of things that occurred after 9/11 lead into Iraq. What was happening during that time was the stop, loss, stop, move. You're not getting out. You're not moving. Everything freezes. So even the drill instructors, that were part of my generation, they were stuck there, demoralized. So drill instructors are already pissed off, right? But now there's a war going on, and I can't get involved because I have to train you. There was a little bit of that. I got to be honest with you. There's a little bit of resentment toward those kids. But every one of them joined knowing they were going to war. Every one of them.
Well, it goes back to the legacy question. This may sound completely rhetorical, But there had to be a piece in the back of your head, that little voice that went, not that boot camp wasn't serious on September 10th. Boot camp is real serious September 12th.
Yeah.
And what your responsibility to get those young men and women ready to go was.
Immense. Yeah, that was the thing you're quarreling with down there, is that you wanted to be part of the action, but incredibly important for you to be doing what you're doing. You know, I remember there were numerous young men coming through there that were making $350,000 on Wall Street, lived in New York during 9/11 or something of the like. 26-year-old kids coming through there with multiple college degrees saying, no, I'm going to fight. I want to be infantry. Train me hard. And we trained them hard. We did. I'm still in contact with a few of my recruits. That some of these men are spoken about in stories in books like these that have a few of my fingerprints on them. Maybe that's my legacy. The real heroes of the Corps of the GWAT. I trained a lot of them. I'm not one of them, but, stood on the shoulders of giants, or however you want to put it. But maybe that's my legacy. I don't know. A lot of very good men, and many of whom I'm still in contact with to this day. And they're incredible fathers, husbands. Lived through that as 18, 19, 20, whatever year old kids, sprinting across the street in Fallujah, loaded down with gear and the like. And I love them all.
It has to be a huge emotional burden. Again, like I said, I'm not saying, no one will ever say that Marine Corps boot camp isn't difficult. It had a completely different pivot change post 9/11. But it's also, I don't care if it's Army, Marines, there's got to be a huge emotional burden for a drill instructor who knows that they're preparing those young recruits to literally be going to combat. Everybody knows it's a potential. On September 9th, every kid who graduated Marine Corps boot camp knew that it was potentially there was going to, I could be in combat. The kids graduating, September, January, whatever boot camp was, 2002, they knew where they were going. And it was, like you said, they came in the door knowing where they were going. And so that added an emotional burden to you and the other drill instructors to do your best to get them ready to go.
Yeah, I think we really had a mentality of, it's kind of the strange thing that you have to deal with as a drill instructor is, you have to weed out the weak ones, but you can't. They can't quit. So how do you deal with this? There's a few different ways to deal with it. Recycle them or whatever. Put them back into a different training company. That's whatever.
Have you guys ever considered yelling at them?
No.
Okay.
No. Very, very, very nice to them down there. We don't want to get anybody flustered or anything. No. Yeah. Trying to. I think you had the mentality like, we got to really weed out the weak ones because these are the guys that are going to get the other guys killed, or whatever kind of mentality you're kind of carrying into it. But you can't just, it's not like selection. It's Marine Corps boot camp. You're going to graduate, and if you're not good enough down the line, maybe whatever, there are certain percentages and quotas of the higher headquarters that go all the way to congressional mandates and all that other stuff. So it's like, if you just, if you made Marine Corps boot camp like selection, you wouldn't have a Marine Corps. I mean, it wouldn't happen, right? So, yeah, if you were allowed to quit, then you wouldn't go nowhere. So,
but on the flip side, there isn't a standard. Say you've got a recruit, yeah, their heart's in it 100%, but they're just not cutting it. There's not a way to separate them and go, hey, you gave it your best. The Marine Corps is not for you.
There is. Oh. There is a way to do that, but it's very rare.
Oh, okay.
And it usually And it takes you have to go through all the other things first. And I'm speaking from experience that's literally like 24 years old right now. Things may be different down there. But you got to go through like, okay, we're going to recycle you. You get injured easily or something like that. And I actually have a memory of a few recruits. One in particular is I'm thinking of right now that picked this guy up from MRP, medical rehab platoon. So he was a drop, and he came to our platoon, kind of gangly, kind of weird, but just really locked on, very loud, very, would snap to as soon as you said. He didn't have any attitude. He was motivated to be there. He's ready to train. And he just couldn't do a pull-up, couldn't shoot the rifle, didn't do much of anything very well. But right there. And this is why I still think about him to this day. And we were his third or fourth platoon. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get this guy just because of his attitude. I like the kid already. I would have never said it. But one day we're on the rifle range, and I don't remember exactly how this happened, but rushing in and out of the barracks, he trips over another recruit and breaks his wrist. And so I freeze everything, get the recruits and inside the barracks, and I'm talking to this kid, and it's clearly broken. And he's in pain, but refuses to show it. I'm like, we're going to take care of you. We're going to take good care of you. He's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Whatever. He didn't break his bearing whatsoever. Drop the kid. He leaves. He goes and gets surgery. And then when we finish training, the field training portion and all that, we go back down to MCRD San Diego. And one of the first things I did was go over to MRP to see him again. And he snaps up and says, yes, sir. And he's got, this full cast on and stuff. And I just said, man, I just want you to know how sorry I am. Something to that effect. And he kind of got emotional. And he said, sir, they're sending me home. So, well, are they going to give you an option to come back? Yes, sir. I don't know if they ever did or if he ever came back, but he's so broken. And I still to this day feel bad about that circumstance, that young man. He had a heart for it. I'll take that all day. All day.
That second enlistment, did you get mandatory extended? Or did you at that point say, because you had said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So when you're that second enlistment in, did you just like, I'm staying in?
Yes. Yeah, I kind of, like I said, I did well on the drill field. I did a lot of cycles because I was stuck there. Stop, loss, stop, move. A lot of recruits came through. I was a senior drill instructor. I was a regular drill instructor, a senior drill instructor for 3 cycles. And then I was a series chief drill instructor, and then got selected to go be the battalion drill master. And I loved that job. And I had to extend.
Is that all admin, I'm assuming?
No. The battalion drill master job, without going into too much detail about it, each battalion has one guy that's the drill master, who kind of is the guy that ultimately grades all the performance of all the drill and ceremonies. He conducts all the ceremonies, every graduation on every Friday. The drill masters are the ones that conduct that and coordinate all that stuff. And they're the ones that, they don't make policy, but they participate in the making of policy for the drill manual and things like that. So you got to be really good at drill, to be that guy.
One last thing before we get off the boot camp thing and start moving further into your career. Did you enjoy calling cadence, and did it come easy for you?
Yes, I did. It's a little bit cringy now for me. I enjoyed it at the time. It is something. It's tradition down there. It's always a competition amongst your peers as who can be the loudest. Whether it's calling cadence or screaming at a recruit. It's it's always a competition about who can be the absolute meanest and loudest and most intimidating. And I was pretty good at it. I was okay. I could be very loud, and I had very good cadence, I think. But I don't think I called cadence once since I left. I don't think I have. But I was good at it. It served its purpose down there. It's part of the art of, the art and science. This is part of the art of recruit training, is the cadence piece. Yeah.
So coming out of there, where'd you head to?
5th Marine Regiment. So.
Back to a communications unit?
No, to an infantry unit. So what ended up happening is I wanted to go to an infantry battalion, and I spoke to my monitor, the person who places people where they go, and told him I want to either go to an air wing unit or I want to go to an infantry unit. That's deploying. I need to deploy. I've been here the whole time. I'm going to miss the war. Boy, I was wrong there. And so
I'm sure you're the only one who thought that.
Oh, yeah. That's a thing. That was a thing down there. All of us were like, we're going to miss the war. And I don't remember exactly how this worked out. I thought I was going to go to 3-5, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. Storied battalion. Arguably the most storied battalion in the Marine Corps. And but my orders were to 1st Marine Division. So the code just sent me to 1st Marine Division. So what ended up happening is you're going to go to 1st Marine Division, and then they're going to put you where they need you. And so they ended up putting me in 5th Marines, which I left MCRD San Diego and went straight to the staff sergeant level communications school. So I learned, get back in a groove. And it's something that was required for promotion to the next rank anyway, I think, or at least detrimental to it. So I went and did that communication school, got back up to speed with kind of what's going on, how this stuff works and whatnot. Checked into 5th Marines in December of 2005. And they said, welcome aboard. Go to supply and get your shit. We are deploying to Iraq in 4 weeks. Oh, perfect. It's great. Where you live, whatever, get all your stuff situated. Because I'm like, that's great. Where are we going to go? We're going to Fallujah. Perfect. This is, great. This is what I wanted for a year. Oh, okay. Whatever. I'll take what I can get. But yeah, so for a year, get on the ground in Fallujah, part of the comp platoon. And there's redundancy in this comp platoon at the regimental level. So there's already a guy doing my job, the job that I would have. I don't know why I was sent there, but regardless, it worked out the way it was supposed to work out. And so they see the redundancy, and the headquarters company says, I need a staff sergeant or somebody to wrangle in this security platoon of random grunts to do these. There was like 3 different jobs that needed to be done that were the headquarters company's responsibility. And one was the Civil Military Center in the center of the city called this, we know it as CMOC, do CMOC security in the middle of the city. And explosive ordnance disposal, mobile security, and kind of like the bits and pieces of any sort of like a log train type security. And so I'd have this platoon of that I ended up taking that job and have this platoon. I got to split up guys. I want to my most independent guys, the guys that are most competent, are going to go over to EOD because they need to operate independently. They don't need me. So kind of your best guys kind of go do that. And then the next best guys go to the CMOC, and because they need to be able to be disciplined and all those things. And then kind of the rest of the guys are going to be part of my mobile security platoon, 4 trucks. You know, I had 250 cals, a Mark 19 and a 240, something like that, with 4 trucks. And so we just kind of get farmed out to go do these random jobs throughout Al-Anbar, as directed by the regimental commander, the RCT at the time, Regimental Combat Team. And so I was kind of in charge of this ragtag group of grunts who were mostly assigned to 5th Marines because they were farmed from within battalions within 5th Marine Regiment, that these guys had already been there, done that, but they have to, we got a quota to give guys to regiment. So who do you think they're going to give you? Are they going to give you the guys that, if I'm a platoon commander or a platoon sergeant, am I going to give guys out on quota that I see being a fire team leader or a squad leader down the road? No, I'm going to give the knucklehead. I'm going to give you the knucklehead. So I had this ragtag group of knuckleheads, and I think they hated me. They absolutely hated me because I'm a communications guy, and they're grunts, and they've been there, and I hadn't. And so that was unique. But I loved those kids too. I loved those guys, all of them. A few of them were decorated for valor in combat and stuff like that, but they're knuckleheads. So they're undisciplined and stuff. But
just one security team though, as a collective whole, because that sounds, with those 3 different assignments, that sounds like something that's going to keep you immensely busy.
I think about it sometimes like I didn't. Everything we did was at night. We went out in the day. I think I can count on one hand how many times we went out during the day. Maybe not. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but yeah, it was busy. I don't remember how much I slept or when I slept or whatever, but it's like I didn't care. This is like 4 years of pent up. I didn't get to participate. I need to do my part. So that was eye-opening, and I had to be better than my best. Luckily, didn't get anybody seriously injured. Had a few injured, and a few things popped off, IEDs here and there and stuff, but really dodged the majority of trouble out there.
For that building in the center of town, primarily just perimeter security for that building?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
And then with the EOD team, am I assuming correctly, just a perimeter security while they're working their problem?
Yes. So you have EOD techs that get called to an event or whatever. They need somebody to take them. So, and I can't speak for the EOD techs exactly how they were allocated out there, but there clearly wasn't enough of them. So you can't, instead, let's augment them with some other folks. That way they can spread out a little bit. So you have one EOD tech that rolls around with 2 gun trucks and, 3 or 4 grunts or something to go out there and to do the job. That way you can spread out your other EOD techs instead of having an EOD tech driving, EOD tech on the gun. So I think that was the rationale.
And if I could spit it out, did you end up doing a full year there?
Yes. 12 months there. And at the end of the deployment, back up. I did that security platoon thing for like 6 months, the first 6 months. And then I had to go back to the communications platoon. I had to get somebody else to take that job from me. I had to go get some sort of MOS credibility. I haven't done my MOS in 5 or 6 years, So I went back to the comp platoon. And at the end of that deployment,
silly question. If you've been away from it for that long, will they just not change your MOS, or could you put in for a request to a different MOS?
Not really. At that point, especially since you're staff NCO, like they're going to hold on to you in that MOS. You just need to get better. You need to figure it out. And so I had to do that. I was never the best communicator, technical communications guy. Other guys that I worked with in that capacity were so much better than me. in that role. They understood the radios better. They understood power and all that other stuff, frequencies and all that. I just never was interested in it, especially since there was a war going on. I just wasn't very interested in it. So at the end of that deployment, we were notified that we're going back effectively for 10 months, and then we're coming back for another year. And of course, I was like, okay. And that's what ended up happening. Gonna get back, refit, do a couple field exercises here and there, and then you're turning around and going right back. So
now that you've been able to taste it, any apprehension going back a second time?
This was in 2008, so I kind of saw it for what it was. And we were supposed to go back to Fallujah. That changed halfway through, and they said, no, you're going to Al-Assad Air Base. There's nothing really going on out there. It's an air base. I kind of saw it for what it was. This is probably just going to be, we're going to go out there and, just hold the ground down. And it kind of is what ended up happening, mission creep, whatever you want to call it, sitting out there, call it a self-licking ice cream cone. Like the only reason I'm doing this work right here is because I'm here. I'm not doing anything to advance the cause out here. The commanders on the ground at that time saw that for what it was. Like, how many of these? We can't keep doing this perpetual nonsense and just. We have like 93 combat outposts or some number like 93 or some combat outposts out there. We can't just keep this up. When are we going to consolidate this, get it back, and force the Iraqis to take control over this? When are we going to do that? And so it's some commander, John Kelly, it was a major general at the time. You'll read about him. And remember, he'd said, he's like, I want everything consolidated back to Al-Assad by November. And he said, I'm going to be eating my Thanksgiving meal at Al-Assad. And he was headquartered in Fallujah at the time. And so everybody's like flipping out, like, how are we going to consolidate all this back down in a matter of months? Figure it out. Because we've gotten way too comfortable with just the status quo out here and just perpetuating this endless war and all this. And so that's really what ended up happening. I'd stayed out there for a little more than 12 months. I was promoted to gunnery sergeant while I was out there. And so I was working with some really good guys. One guy in particular was the company first sergeant and was the best 8999 first sergeant major I think I've ever worked with. He was incredible. A guy named Mike Pritchard. Learned so much from him because I was, a gunnery sergeant. I moved out of the comp platoon again to go be a company gunnery sergeant. The company gunnery sergeant basically run the camp where the regiment was headquartered.
Now, is the primary mission set for a comp platoon? Is it maintaining fixed communications at the base and communicating with the teams in the field? Or was that unit who deployed into the field and then they were the communications point back to the base?
Yeah, so at the regimental level, your maneuver units, your maneuvering elements, whatever, had their own communications capability. At the regiment, you just had to really make sure that the communications were able to reach them. And at the regimental level, you were responsible really for this. If the battalions or the subordinate units required help or required assistance or whatever, you can farm out people, equipment, whatever, to make sure that their communications worked. But I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, it does. I just, I think back to all the war pictures that I've always seen, and the communications guy was stuck to the, commanding officer's ass. And I didn't know if he's part of that platoon or that battalion, or if he's a comm guy assigned to that.
It depends. It could be. Depending on the unit, depending on how they're allocated, how they're stretched, depending on the capability of the Marines.
So you came back from that second deployment. It was another year. You're in your third enlistment at this point, right?
That sounds right. 12 years, yeah.
What was your game plan going forward from there? What were you thinking? 20 years? 30 years?
I was all in. Like I was, doing these deployments, being part of the fight, being part of the mission. And it was tiring doing 2-year-long deployments in a row like that, but I was still ready to go. And at that point, the Marine Corps was starting to shift out of the Anbar province and starting to shift toward Afghanistan. So I was like, okay, there's a new fight. And I looked at it like, no, I'm going to go as far as they'll let me go. I want to be a sergeant major, and I want to go as far as I could possibly go. I love this. So towards the end of that last deployment, I'm getting, I need to go somewhere. I need to change my unit. And so the opportunity...
Is that by choice or by the Marine Corps will make you go somewhere else?
Well, the Marine Corps wanted to make me go. They're like, okay, 2-year-long deployments, you need to go do something other than deploy.
Oh, okay.
And so the natural thing for me to do is to be an instructor in my mind, at the Staff Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, hopefully on Camp Pendleton, because it was local. I had a bunch of friends there. I knew the staff. I knew the sergeant major that ran it. And I felt like I could do well in that capacity because I'd done it before as a drill instructor. So I put in the paperwork to go be an instructor there. And the monitor at Headquarters Marine Corps that decides those things writes me back and says, hey, you're not going to the Staff Academy. I don't need you there. I need you.
When you were as a drill instructor and wanted to get out, they wouldn't let you out.
That's right.
Now you're trying to get back in. They're like, you can't get back in.
That's exactly right. So, no, we don't need you there. Where I need you is to go be an assistant Marine officer instructor at a college somewhere. And I didn't like that at all. Like, I'm not interested in doing that. I don't care to be around college students and all that. I want to be around Marines. I want to do Marine things. It's like, I don't really care. This is what you're going to do. Well.
Did you ever used to watch the old TV show, Baba Black Sheep?
Yes.
I'm hearing him. Bunch of college boys.
That's right. So he didn't really care what I wanted, which is, there's a strange pattern of that in the Marine Corps that they don't really care what you want. It's not about you. It's about the needs of the Marine Corps, rightfully so. But so he basically forces me to put in a paperwork to go be a Marine officer or an assistant Marine officer instructor at a college somewhere. And he gives me the available 10 schools. He says, put them in order. Your favorite is number 1 all the way to your least favorite. And I did it by order of climate. So like Southern California, Texas, Florida, all the way up to number 9 is Ohio State University, and then number 10 is Minnesota. And he gave me number 9.
Oh, it's nice of you.
Yeah.
Or nice of him.
Well,
not to go all the way to
Ohio
10.
State University. It's like, I'm a Southern California boy, and it's like, I don't want to go to the Midwest. It gets cold there, right? And so I kind of went to Ohio State kicking and screaming. And I show up there after having spent the summer of 2009 at Officer Candidate School instructing officer candidates. I show up in Columbus, Ohio, kind of with a bad attitude. Like, I don't want to be here.
To say the least.
Yeah, like Marines were, deploying to Afghanistan and all this. I didn't really care for the whole situation. And I get there and I just fall in love with it. I fall in love with the city, with the university, with the sports team, obviously, the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is incredible.
As you're sitting here in a USC shirt.
Yeah, it's okay. I can have 2 loves in that regard, but just an incredible, something that kind of made me scratch my head, go, is there something else to life besides just kind of grinding, doing this life and this deploying and being a Marine and just being intense and doing all these things and going all in towards this and that. And it kind of showed me something different. And then just like 2 months into that, in 2009, like I'm introduced to this woman who's the most strikingly beautiful human being I've ever seen in my life, and the kindest and sweetest thing. And I don't know if, people may or may not be able to grasp what I'm trying to, or have experienced it, but I knew right then that she was going to be my wife. I just knew it right then. I don't know that she knew it right then and there, but I pursued this woman, and it turns out that's going to go to Ohio State kicking and screaming, and that's where I meet the woman of my dreams, and then ultimately
Let's get some clarity for people listening. She wasn't a college student.
Correct. So yeah, this lady that I'm introduced to was working in development for the Ohio State at several different colleges, different schools, and different departments. And one of those was the Naval ROTC unit. And so she raised money for the scholarships and the like for the ROTC unit. And so, no, she already had a master's degree and multiple degrees from the University of Central Florida. And so she was there kind of pursuing the idea of a PhD, and she wanted to do it at Ohio State. And how it ended up working is she needed to establish residency in Columbus and do like kind of work there for a year before she started her PhD. And she started doing this job with development and fell in love with it. She's like, no, this is what I need to do. This is where my heart is. This is what I need to do. And so
she's not from Ohio.
She's from Florida.
So she didn't want the cold weather either.
No. We both loved Columbus for what it was and for what it's how it served us at the time. But she very much prefers, the warmer weather for sure.
It puts a unique perspective though on our careers when you look back and go, what I wanted was Pendleton back into that realm, which I felt comfortable with, which I knew. Mm-hmm. And somebody else said, no, you have to go do this. Mm-hmm. And I went kicking and screaming. I'm speaking for you. But it sounds like it turned out to be maybe one of the best things that you could have done, not only for yourself, but for your career.
It did. It was because, fortunately or unfortunately, I spent just barely 2 years there because I was there for a year and then I got selected for promotion to the next rank, which I didn't expect. I got selected for promotion to first sergeant. And so I kind of begrudgingly accepted that because it meant I had to leave early. But so now I'm kind of got this whole yin yang thing going on. It's like, okay, I see something else that's beautiful and unique in the world, outside of the Marine Corps, but there's still this part of me that's drive that wants to go get back in the fight. And this is 2010, 2011 timeframe. So this is when it's really hot in Afghanistan. And not that it wasn't before or thereafter, but it was like, okay, I want to get back in the fight. But I have a different perspective I had a different perspective on life, my life. And there's actually something else that's more important out there. But with that, I wanted to go to a unit that was going to get into the fight. And so I requested to go.
Did you express that to her, and what was her?
Yes. I had this discussion with her. She understood who I was, where I was with all this. And she knew that when she met me. She knew what drove me. She saw how things affected me in that manner. She knows me better than anybody else knows me. And the type, the woman that, as a man, a masculine, stoic, whatever you want to call it, you allow yourself to break yourself down to her because you trust her with those things. And that's what I had with her for the first time in my entire life. I never really had anything like that before at that level. And so she knew I was up front with her about these things. And so I ended up getting orders to go to MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command, the 1st Battalion out in Camp Pendleton, California. And was fortunate to go out there and to work with some absolute badass professionals in that unit, and many of whom are my friends to this day, some of whom have been on your show, your podcast. And
are you back in a communications operations perspective?
That's a great question. So once I got selected to be a first sergeant, I was no longer in a communication MOS. I was now considered my MOS designator would be 8999. So you've had sergeant majors on this cast before, maybe a few others. And so your new job is that you're the senior enlisted advisor to a commander in all things relating to his or her command. That's a very broad spectrum, but that's basically what you do. And now you, even though you're a communicator, you can go be a senior enlisted advisor to a logistics unit, to an infantry unit, to an air wing, to an admin. You can go be as a first sergeant at the company or battery level. You can be that senior enlisted advisor. And so if you've never been with the artillery battery before and you're a first sergeant, you go to work, that's on you to get really smart in that arena before you go over there, because you're going to be the senior enlisted advisor to the commander. He will have other, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but like the Marine Corps splits at E8. You can either be a master sergeant or a first sergeant. The master sergeant is going to be the senior enlisted advisor to his or her commander or whomever that in regard to his or her specific MOS, Marine Occupational, Military Occupational Specialty. So we didn't have a military occupational specialty. We're more of the overarching command advisor. So kind of a mouthful there, but kind of a drawn out answer to your question. But yeah, I got the comm stuff up here, but I'm actually not MOS specific when I'm advising the commander. I'm more like on all manners of things pertaining to the command. Good order and discipline starts with the first sergeant, the 8999.
It's almost like a chief of staff position where you're helping all the operations run. In
a way, yeah, you're facilitating that, but you really are the link to the between the enlisted and the commander, really. And you're also, especially at that kind of, I say young level, but the first sergeant level, you're advising a company level commander who's either a captain or maybe a major, could be a chief warrant officer if you're in a logistics type unit, but you're advising that young captain or that, on enlisted issues and how to process them and how to deal with them and to deal, to kind of align that commander on his or her judgment and how they deal with disciplinary issues. How do we get the unit better? How do we move forward? What's the best way for us to, all that stuff. You're kind of, and in any unit, the master sergeant and the first sergeant need to, or the sergeant major, the master guns, they need to be shaking hands on a regular basis, and they need to be in step and with how they're advising the commander. And if they have disagreements, they need to work them out behind closed doors. But when you open those doors and you're in front of your unit, however big it is, then you're a united front. These are all kind of real basic things for when you're advised. It doesn't matter if it's a military commander. I'm sure you saw the same things throughout your career. You experienced similar things. I
boil it down to being a mother and a father. In front of your kids, you got to appear like you're on the same page. Yeah. If you're not on the same page, deal with that behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Don't give your kids the opportunity to pit you against each other because they know you aren't on the same page.
Mm. Yep. That's spot on.
It's human nature.
Yeah. That's how we operate.
So when do you get back to Pendleton?
So, yeah, I get back to Pendleton in October of 2011. Check into at the time it was called 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion, and now it's called 1st Marine Raider Battalion. Lucky enough to go on a deployment to Afghanistan as a company first sergeant out there with Alpha Company, and incredible experience. I was surrounded by a bunch of people who are a whole lot better than me, which is awesome. And they were just incredible professionals, experienced. The master sergeant that I worked with, I'm the first sergeant, master sergeant that I worked with was on his 5th Afghanistan deployment, something like that. Just an incredible source of knowledge, an incredible example of what it means to be a stoic warfighter. And that was the same with the company XO. The company commander was incredible. The Marines were incredible. The team chiefs, the team leaders, and then all the way down to the junior Marines, the element members were just awesome human beings. And we ended up taking 4 MARSOC, MSOTs, like Marine Special Operations teams, took 4 teams from us, and then got attached to Green Beret ODAs, Operational Detachment Alphas, and then a SEAL team, a bunch of different, we had a member from every branch at one point assigned to our company or our task force when we were out there, because we actually had a Coast Guard guy that came out there. We had Air Force controllers and a Coast Guard guy that came out to augment like some CCT, some controllers or something. He did something like that. So I was like, this is a true joint effort. This is joint as it's ever going to get. It was a beautiful thing. And so that was a great opportunity in the Helmand River Valley to experience that and to grow from that, to learn from the men that I worked with, and to that there was a lot of growth that occurred there, a lot of self-realization, a lot of, hey, this is what you need to do better. This, you gotta step up your game, and you don't need, especially if you're a support guy or gal that goes to a special operations unit, the worst thing you can possibly ever do is to try to be one of them. That's the worst thing. They don't care about that. They have plenty of them. They have plenty of shooters. They want you to be who you are. Are you good at admin? Then you're just as valuable as one of my shooters if you can do your job as well as he does his job.
Be a special operator and admin.
So that's huge. That was, again, if it doesn't matter if it's your intel guy or the guy that makes the food, the logistician, the communicator, it doesn't matter. You don't need to try to be like those guys. Go do your best, absolute best of what you do to facilitate that job. And so that's kind of the way I looked at it. I needed to be the best possible company first sergeant I can be, to free up, to make sure that these guys don't have to worry about anything in that arena so they can focus on their mission. And so that's an attitude that I really took throughout the rest of my career, is how can I facilitate? Because I'm at the point, I'm not a shooter anymore. Not that I ever was, but I'm a little long in the tooth for all of this. So how can I best provide this umbrella for the guys to be as successful as possible? Because I'm at the level where I'm not just the link between the enlisted and the commanders. I'm also the link between this unit and the next higher unit, which sometimes shit rolls downhill, as you know. And if you allow that, if you don't provide that umbrella for the guys, it's really distracting. And so I kind of looked at it in that manner. If I got to take a shitball to the face, then I'll be the guy to do it. I'm not going to allow the other guys to take that. It'll free them up to do their jobs.
On the flip side of that, though, with the proximity to those types of teams, did you get the opportunities to get more range time, or if you wanted it, did you get a chance to jump out of airplanes, that type of stuff, just because of your proximity to those units?
I did. I felt like I fell out of a plane a few times, but I never did anything super cool or groovy or anything like that. Nothing like what those guys did. Yes, you got a team we're doing the workup. You got a team that's on the range. And it's like, okay, I can kind of cut away from here. I'm going to go see what the team is doing. Maybe I'll take my gun. I'll take my rifle with me or something, And so, yeah, that was fun. That's not something that you would get the opportunity to do in a regular unit for the most part. I never ever wanted to take a seat away from one of the guys who needed it, whether that be a jump school seat or SEER or any of the other schools. I never wanted to be someone who took the seat away, because that was a nice to have for me.
Right.
It wasn't a need to have. It was a need to have for them.
How long was that deployment to Afghanistan?
I think it was 8 months. I think it was around 8 months.
And when you mentioned having Green Berets assigned, was it an embedded type operation like Green Berets typically do? Yeah,
we had one Marine team that was the advise and assist element for the Afghan commandos. So they would train and then go out with the Afghan commandos. And then the rest of the teams were doing village stability operations, VSO operations throughout the Helmand River Valley. And that was a tough gig for those guys to try to, the Vietnam model of embedding with right there, living in the village with them and kind of training them up to be self-sustaining. And that's easier said than done. And they had a tough job doing it. That's why they have special operations guys doing it, guys and gals. Like, you need to have a different level of patience, different level of maturity, and an ability to see things really for what they are, instead of trying to apply your own standards to your host nation. But that was, you got a bunch of gunslingers out there. And so the maturity of those guys to be able to be in those jobs to go, no, our job isn't to shoot. We can do some of that stuff, and we can track some bad guys, and we can track down some bad guys and put together a few targeting packages here and there. But our job, that's not our job. Our job is to get ourselves out of a job in this part of the country. So how can we bolster this village, or, how can we make sure that this highway is safe? How can we make sure that the Kajaki Dam isn't going to get raided as it does on a regular basis, and the Afghan workers get kidnapped and then ransomed, et cetera, et cetera. So how can we do that? How can we work with the sheikhs? How can we work with the village elders? How can we, figure this out? And again, for a bunch of gunslingers, that's easier said than done to keep them focused for a long deployment to do that. When it's like, no, your job's not to fast rope onto a roof of a compound, and it's more to do this. And so professionalism, maturity of those guys to do that job was really, it was a blessing to see it, observe it, to see it to experience it.
In a weird way, how did that first security detail operation that you had in Iraq ultimately benefit you running these type of operations?
Tactically, a little bit, but not really, especially with those guys. But the idea that I'm going to come in and be in a position to stand up straight and be like, yeah, I'm your senior enlisted guy, and no, I'm not. I don't do your job, but I understand a little bit about it, and kind of being the outsider that comes in and now you're in charge. I'd already had experience with that to an extent, so I felt kind of comfortable in that role, and I wanted to make it a point that I'm not here to do your job. I'm not interested in doing your job. I want to make your job as easy as possible. And I kind of held, like I said, I held on to that for really the rest of my career. And I think that's a recipe for success, at least in the first sergeant major arena, in my opinion.
Coming back from that deployment, going back to the reoccurring question, does your game plan for the remainder of your career start changing at this point? Or now are you more kind of in the mindset of, I want to try to stay here for the remainder of my career?
I would love to stay at Camp Pendleton for the rest of my career. I thought that was unrealistic, but that would have been nice just because I love it. But I knew at that point it was like, no, like I'm already shifting toward my wife. But I'm at this point a seasoned first sergeant, and I know that I'm on a trajectory to be a sergeant major. So now it turns into the goal is to be a sergeant major. And so I get back from that deployment and I go to a couple schools, and then I get orders to 1st Intelligence Battalion on Camp Pendleton. So this is in 2014. Summer of 2014, I go check in at 1st Intelligence Battalion, and that was very interesting. I'd never been in a unit like that before, surrounded by a bunch of people who are smarter than me. And when I say a bunch, like pretty much everybody smarter than me. And it was a lot of fun. I didn't know what exactly to expect, but I really enjoyed it. And yes, I really enjoyed the idea that I went home almost every night. It was like, what is this? This is weird. And so I kind of fell in love with that, having a relatively regular job and being able to go home to my wife every night. Kind of fell in love with that. So I really enjoyed that time at 1st Intel. And similar to when I was at Ohio State, I was only there for like a year, and I got selected for the next rank to sergeant major. And so I was hoping that I would, as a sergeant major, be able to fill a job at Camp Pendleton, but I, at the same time, knew the needs of the Marine Corps were going to prevail. And so they say, hey, you got selected. Congratulations. Give me your 3 units that are coming available, but they have to be in different regions. So I gave 3 different squadrons, air wing units. I've never been with an air wing unit before. And so I gave them 1 at Pendleton, 1 at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and 1 at Beaufort, South Carolina. And it comes back with an infantry battalion at Camp Lejeune. So it's like, oh, okay. An infantry battalion, great. Camp Lejeune, can I
It's the Carolinas.
Yeah. But, you know, and again, in retrospect, I wasn't thrilled with it at first. I'm just being honest. I wasn't thrilled with it. I didn't want that. I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I wanted to do something around here.
So it's going to end up being a good assignment because you didn't want to go to Ohio State either.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't see that at the time.
Of course not.
You know, again, like, so I have this conversation with, at the time, the one MEF Sergeant Major. There's a guy named Brad Castle. A few of your audience probably know who he is. And he tells me some things that really stuck with me. He's like, yeah, I know you want to stay with the MEF. I know you don't want to go to Lejeune. But he goes, being an infantry battalion sergeant major is something I always wanted to do. And I never got the opportunity to do it. And I was like, that's the MEF sergeant major telling you that. Maybe you just need to shut up and you know, salute sharply and about face and then go do your job. How about you do that? And it was kind of like, roger that, you know? And so I did. Got assigned to 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. And this is in January of 2016. And so I look into 2-8, I call out there, I talk to the guys out there, and they're like, hey, we're deploying in June. I'm reporting the end of March. So you got like 2 months, you know, and some change before you're deploying. We got to go to 29 Palms to do this, you know, 6-week exercise in somewhere in that time. So it's like,
work up for Afghanistan?
No, we were going to go we did a Europe deployment. They called it the Black Sea Rotation Force only because the headquarters of the battalion was in Romania. And then we had multiple companies spread out over across Europe and then even Northern Africa. We had some guys doing some stuff down there. So it was, you know, kind of a counter Russia type thing, presence. Some weird things were happening in Europe in the mid to late 2010s. If you remember, there's some, we're going to pull the army out of Poland. We're going to backfill them with Marines. We're going to get Norway back in the mix. We're going to start sending Marines up to Norway and doing it. And so that was what the Black Sea Rotation Force did. It was a reinforced battalion is what it was. We had a mechanized company with us that we deployed with. It was a lot of fun. It was the most incredible deployment. It was the most incredible non-combat deployment I'd ever been on, with everything that we were doing, traveling all over Europe and the Marines being able to operate down in Djibouti, Africa, and a few other places. It was a good time. Had a company in Morone, Spain, company in Sicily, company in Norway, company in Bulgaria. And we had local companies. We could do exercises all over the place. Go to Lithuania, Latvia.
How often were you on the move in that position?
I'd never traveled so much in my life. I never stayed in the same place more than a week, with maybe a few exceptions when we were doing exercises that required us to be there for longer than a week. It's funny because we traveled commercial mostly, but I'd say maybe three quarters of our travel, and I say our, I mean the commanding officer and me. The majority of our travel was commercial, but the other 25% was on a military aircraft, whether you were flying with the dudes or you were flying a C-12 that the Air Force provided for you. And I kept most of my boarding passes for that deployment just for grins. And at the end of the deployment, I pulled them all out. And I had 42 boarding passes.
In what time period?
This was in a 6-month period.
Wow.
42 boarding passes. And I didn't keep all my boarding passes. So I just thought that was interesting. Flew a lot. That was a lot. That deployment, all the travel around there kind of smoked me. But it was such a great experience. It was a great experience. Something different. That was very different than what a Marine unit is used to doing.
So then when that deployment ends, where do you come back to? You come back to Lejeune?
So go back to Camp Lejeune. In my mind, I'm like, hey, I did a deployment. Maybe I can bend somebody's ear and be like, hey, is there anything open at Pendleton for me to get back? Because, my wife and I decided that she would stay here since she had a steady job. And instead of uprooting, going to North Carolina just to say goodbye to me while I go train and go on deployment, she stayed here. and maintained her career and kept doing that. But I was always like, I'm going to get back as soon as I can. Get back as soon as I can.
And you got to do
whatever I can.
Closing in on 20 about this point, right?
Yeah, I was at 20 after. I was at 21, I think, after that deployment, something like that. I was at 19, I think, when I got selected to sergeant major.
Are you thinking 30?
Yeah.
At this point in your life, are you thinking 30 or what's your plan?
Question. I don't know. At that point, it was like I'd met my goals. I'd long exceeded the goals that I set for myself in my first deployment, if you remember. But I'd met my goals. I'm a sergeant major now. And it's kind of like, hey, I can hang my hat on this. But I don't really have aspirations. It's not about me anymore. It's not about my trajectory anymore. I've met my goals. So my mindset, I think, was more like, I'm going to ride this out and see which direction it goes. If the Marine Corps kicks me this way and I like it, then I'll go that way. If it kicks me this way, then I'm going to go ahead and step away, because I really like to prioritize my relationship and being away from her. I didn't realize it at the time was doing a lot of damage to me and to her, but I only speak for myself. And so I come back from that deployment and I'm bending whoever's ear, whoever would listen to me, just be like, hey, what can I do to get back to Pendleton? I want to get back to my wife. And people would. The
flip side to that question, though, is if you've now crossed that 20-year mark and you've hit the magic point where you could retire, why not just retire?
So my attitude was,
I still love being a Marine.
Yeah, I mean, you have a kind of a minimum 2 years that you have to, from your date of rank.
Okay.
And if you accept the promotion, you got to stick around. The Marine Corps is going to give you this promotion. You can't just walk away.
You got to vest yourself in that position.
Yeah, rightfully so. It should be that way. So my attitude was, I'm going to try to get back to Pendleton. If I can't get back to Pendleton, then I'm going to stay with this unit, do another deployment, which ended up happening. I ended up doing that. And if I don't get back to Pendleton after this, then I'm retiring. I'm done. If I get back to Pendleton, then we'll see where it goes from there. And that was my attitude. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. So yeah, I stay at 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, do another workup, go on another deployment, this time in the Far East.
Another 42 boarding passes between Carolinas and San Diego.
It wasn't quite that bad this time. It was a good time. It was a good deployment. It was, what they call a UDP, Unit Deployment Program. Rotate in, headquartered on Okinawa at Camp Schwab, and then shoot your companies out to go do various exercises across the Pacific, and go down to the Philippines, do an exercise, go up to Camp Fuji, do an exercise. I can't remember if we had somebody in Korea or not, but just doing exercises, and you're there on a contingency for the Korea model as required and all that other stuff. But I said North Korea, but it was a good opportunity to train. But I knew on that deployment, it started kind of hitting me that I'm starting to hit the wall a little bit. I'm tired. I'm kind of irritable, starting to get irritable. I'm on that deployment in a position where you're able to be on liberty and you're able to consume alcohol. I was consuming alcohol on that deployment. I wasn't abusing it, but I was drinking it, and realizing that I feel like, you're out there kind of training and you start thinking about it and you're like, I can't wait to finish this. I just want to finish this and get back. I don't like to, where I never really felt that before. I was always zeroed in on what was going on and started losing my focus, I think, on that deployment. At the end of that deployment, the opportunity popped up for me to come back to 1st Marine Raider Battalion. Now it used to be Special Operations Battalion, 1st Marine Raider Battalion, to take over as the battalion sergeant major. And I absolutely snatched that up. And so I'm looking at it like, oh, it's great. I do this time, as a geo-bachelor, but I'm coming home to Southern California. And so I finished that deployment, get back to Camp Lejeune, spend about 2 months at Camp Lejeune, and then I execute orders and come back to Southern California. And this is in December of 2018 is when I get back here and jump into the seat at 1st Marine Raider Battalion with a great commanding officer. And
from an operational perspective, how does your duties change from the last time you were there to now, as far as your responsibilities?
Well, the responsibilities are a lot different. You have to be more up and out, but are you just higher up in the level of admin per se?
That's one aspect. The operational aspects of the entire battalion?
That's one aspect of it, but just like in any other, like I explained, like in any other unit, like I have a counterpart on the master gunnery sergeant side of the house. And in any MARSOC battalion now, or any MARSOC unit now, you have a master gunnery sergeant and a sergeant major. At the 05 level and above, you have your sergeant major, who's the senior enlisted advisor, all manner of things pertaining to the command. And then you have a master gunnery sergeant who they call the soft cell, the Special Operations Forces senior enlisted leader. And so that guy is going to be the advisor to the commander on all things operational. As the sergeant major, you don't really need to dive into any of that. If you're aware of it, that's what you should do as a senior enlisted advisor. You should be very smart about it, but you don't need to be the advisor because there's another guy to do that.
If I can equate it to many law enforcement agencies, the ones before they get really large, you have a chief of police who is obviously the senior commander of the entire organization, and they will usually operate with two captains. One captain is going to run operations / patrol. The other one is going to run admin / personnel.
That's a very good link. And that would have been, in those terms, I would have been the guy doing the admin logistics type stuff and personnel stuff. Yeah.
How long does that assignment last? And let me actually take a step back. This burnout that you're starting to experience when you're in Asia, the increased drinking, that type stuff, does it subside when you get back to Pendleton, or does it increase?
No. I brought it home with me and didn't really realize it. My wife did. Brought it to my attention.
Had you been much of a drinker before that? I'll call the Asia trip or deployment a start to it.
Not really. I would consume it. I enjoyed it, but never abuse it. And so I didn't see what was happening. I just knew that I was distracted. Even though I came back to Southern California, I thought I'd come back to my wife, and then, I get back with a unit with whom, with a bunch of guys with whom I'm familiar, and then everything will be okay. It'll taper back to normal. That was just a one-off, being on that deployment, doing the Lejeune thing, and it turned out to be the opposite. So I'm bringing this back with me. It's being brought to my attention from my wife, and I dismiss it like, this is no big deal. We're going to figure this out. We haven't been together for a few years. We're just going through some bumpy patches. That I was wrong. And I realized it. Well, I didn't really fully realize it, but I'm at 1st Marine Raider Battalion, the best job in the Marine Corps, for a battalion level sergeant major, surrounded by the most amazing men in the Marine Corps, and a commanding officer with whom I've known since he was a captain. He was the battalion commander, and just the most amazing man and leader. Amazing master gunnery sergeants that I worked with. And, I'm just surrounded by excellence, and I found myself being, the drag. Like I'm not even able at this point to hold my own water on this. And it just, I ended up starting to drink more because that's going to fix it, right? Like,
is it personal perception, or are you actually being called out on it at work?
I think I'm a realist. And so I wasn't really being called out on it. There's a couple conversations that I had with my commander toward the end of my time where he was like, hey, let's finish strong. He and I retired at the same time. So I think he was kind of like patting me on the butt a little bit, but let's be honest. There's not a whole lot of people in any unit, regardless of what they think about the sergeant major, that are actually going to say something. There's good to that and there's bad to that.
But at the same token, the commanding officer, if you have a good enough relationship with them, your counterpart
Yeah.
Your master guns. In theory, wouldn't they be the people to privately call you out?
Yes. Absolutely. And again, like I said, it kind of happened between my commander and me toward the end. But I didn't realize how bad it was. I was just really spiraling. So I had the opportunity. I'd been there for about 2 years, and I had the opportunity to move up to an 06, a colonel level job as a sergeant major. I was offered some phenomenal units, like storied units, across the Marine Corps to be at that level. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking back to 10 years prior where I'm like, that's the goal. And I'm thinking about it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm spent. I don't have the gusto for this. I don't have the motivation for it. I start seeing myself like always angry, always irritable, in a hurry to get home so I could sit down on the couch and open a drink so I could shut this up. Relationship with friends starting to diminish. People not wanting to be around me, including I won't say including my wife. That's not fair. She wanted to be around me, not who I was becoming.
Not the alcoholic.
That's right. And so a lot of self-loathing, a lot of things bubbling up from the mid-2000s to the whatever, over the whole career, things bubbling up. And then me, not wanting to deal with it. And then this self-deprecation attitude, even allowed myself to, when I was at Camp Lejeune, when I was out there, find myself being very frustrated with the Marine Corps and the system and everything else, and finding myself almost allowing myself to have the victim mentality, which is deadly. You tell any person, any group of people enough times that they're victims, and they're going to believe you eventually, regardless of their own self-worth or what is actually occurring around them. And so I'd like to think that I didn't entertain that for very long, but it was there. It was part of me, which goes to show how toxic I was becoming internally. And, very ineffective at that point. I felt as a battalion sergeant major. There's some things that I did right. There's some things that I did very well, but I didn't have the gas to push through and to be really super effective as I should have been. And so I made the decision to retire there because I was no longer serving the Marines the way they deserve to be served. And I think back on that time, and toward the last few weeks of my career, I remember just unloading, yelling at an operator, a gunnery sergeant who's highly respected, and to this day I highly respect this man, just unloading on him for something minuscule, and just him giving me this look like, you totally flabbergasted, like, what is wrong with you? And I remember going back to my office, shutting the door, and then just shaking, being like, what is wrong with me? Like, what is happening right now? I can't wrap my head around what's going on right now. And, Did
you ever go talk to somebody?
I did.
Not till after you got out, though, I'm assuming.
So I started speaking with a therapist who worked at our unit as a civilian therapist during my first tour there. And she had since gone out and started her own private practice and was still in the area. So I was able to be a patient of hers. And so I started seeing her, and it helped. Let's be honest. I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for her. I'm going to say that with a lot of confidence. But she also understood Marines, and she understood the mindset, especially of people who had experienced the things that we have experienced. men that have experienced the things that those MARSOC operators experience, and during the same time frame. She was a therapist at the unit, seeing the casualty reports coming in, seeing the guys come back injured, because she worked in medical. So she's seeing the guys that are like, that guy was medevaced, and he's all like, she sees this, and then she sees the units coming back. She sees the trauma. And so I think that was, I won't speak for her, but that was part of her motivation to be like, this is my specialty. It's PTS. It's this trauma stuff. It's resiliency. And so she kind of put it all together and started a private practice. And good luck trying to get an appointment with her, because she is the best there is in the business as far as I'm concerned. And I've seen quite a few of them. But I did
makes me wonder though, who's the therapist for the therapist? Because there's got to be a darkness that comes when all you're doing is hearing and seeing these stories.
I've mentioned those things to her. Like, how do you do this? Like, how do you sit there for 6, 7, 8 patients a day?
Because it doesn't get easier with the next patient.
Soak this in, and in order to be an effective therapist, you have to feel it and then be able to put it in your brain housing group and all the training and schooling you've gone through, and be able to spit something back out that's useful to that person. There's none other that has been able to do it the way she does it. And I've asked her that question. Of course, she kind of laughs it off and like, no, it's not easy. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how you do it. And it's
that same stupid type A mentality.
Yeah.
I'm good.
No,
I'm
cool.
good.
I'm straight.
It's good.
Yeah, exactly. So I decided to retire. It was kind of a quick decision.
Can I keep you on that topic just for a second? Through working through your issues, did you determine, and where I'm trying to go with this is I'm putting you in the opportunity to save yourself earlier in your career. Was it a cumulative effect of everything you experienced just compounding, or did you find that it was single incidents that if you would have dealt with that incident a little bit better, maybe it might not have had as much of a ripple effect?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
There's a moment in life when you realize it was never about you. Grind, spelled GRND, is different. There's no I in it on purpose, because the mindset was never about ego. It's about the mission. Started by a former Army Ranger, it's not about where you are. It's about how you show up. Different lives, different pressures, but the same mindset. Grind isn't clothing you wear just to look good. It's a reminder of why you keep going when it gets tough, and you keep putting in the work when no one's watching. This isn't just fashion, it's fuel. Because real work isn't loud. Real effort doesn't need applause. And real purpose doesn't quit. Head over to thegrindcollective.com. That's the GRND collective.com, and use the promo code transition15 for 15% off your order.
Looking back, where could I have maybe acknowledged a thing or two? I don't know that I could have. And I say that because it's not even necessarily the stoicism but it's no, I'm not going to allow this to bother me. And I've always been somebody who feels very deeply and experiences things very deeply. And combat is one of those things, but if you kind of overlay leadership with that, it's a little bit easier to just kind of be a little hard and to be firm and know that, especially when everything's going chaotic around you, whether it's in combat or in garrison or in life, when everybody's looking around, scared, unsure, they look for somebody who's strong, who's stoic, who's not going to allow it, who's not going to panic, who's going to be the one that everybody gravitates to in order to get things back to normal, back out of chaos. And I always wanted to look at myself through that lens. And even if I didn't always operate that way, I wanted to look at myself like that in order to not allow things to bother me, because if they bother me, then that diminishes my ability to be an effective leader. And it also makes it okay for those around me to participate in the chaos. Again, whether it's in combat, garrison,
life. So I've always kind of wanted to maintain that mindset. So
the only thing back to my question, though, is being a voice of advice, experience, that didn't work for you. That didn't work being the one who was the guy who tried to be the glue to hold it all together. Because ultimately, you've got to replace your glue.
Yes.
Nobody's holding your glue together, so to speak.
Hence, I believe I can look back on it now and go, hence the drinking, hence the frustration, the irritability, the arguing, the just, stupid decisions on surrounding drinking, just,
And obviously, the men and women who've served post 9/11, these last 20-ish years, are going to have a completely different perspective than hopefully maybe somebody who's going to serve 20 years a decade from now. And maybe there's 20 years of peacetime, and it will be very, very different. And the annoyances they'll have is like, really, another training operation? But maybe we can only hope for that.
yeah.
But when you're getting 20 sustained years of combat deployments, and you mentioned the leadership perspective, leadership adds something to that, though, because all the men and women that serve underneath you. And though it doesn't directly, you're not paying per se, you didn't step on an IED or whatever, it has an impact on you as a leader because those are your people.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that I discussed with my therapist. Well, she discussed it with me. It's something that she saw happening in the 2011, 2012 timeframe was she talked about there's two demographics that I knew would be a long-term issue, an issue that would pop up later on down the road. It was the senior leaders of, battalion level, or let's say company level or higher level leaders that are observing this occurring, and pilots or the folks who controlled munitions. Like, so it's not just the guys, the shooters, the guys that are in, she saw that the leadership of those men or those who were affected were going to have a different level of combat stress, PTS, whatever you want to call it, down the road. She saw that for what it was years ago. And she couldn't have been more right, because she told me, she's like, your situation is, there's a lot of guys, and I'm not going to say who they are, but you know who they are, and they're going through the same things. You might be surprised. So don't act like you need to go sit in the corner and you're not the only one going through this. And so that's a great point.
Well, and the other important thing that always comes back as a component of that is don't ever compare yourself to somebody else. If the noises in your head are getting loud, it doesn't matter who you are or what you've experienced compared to somebody else. They're loud to you. Go talk to somebody about it.
Yeah. Yeah, comparing and contrasting your level of trauma to somebody else's. I mean, there are different levels of trauma, but each brain is going to process that differently, because you not only do you have your own personality or whatever, but you're also bringing how you were raised as a child into all these things, and to how you've trained yourself, or the things that you've learned, or your day-to-day experiences that could be different than this person to your left or to your right that experienced it differently and is able to process it differently than you are. Yes.
Your first day as a civilian, what date?
January 1st, 2022. So my last day in the Marine Corps was December 31st, 2021.
How was that being a civilian?
Well, my transition didn't go the way I wanted it to go, and at least initially, because I didn't, I kind of culminated very quickly, and then it didn't happen on my terms. Well, it happened on my terms. That's not right. It happened on my terms, but I wasn't in the best spot, and I wasn't doing a lot, or wasn't able to do a lot to climb myself out of it. So did the drinking persist?
Well, you didn't get an opportunity to come in for a landing. You grabbed a parachute and jumped out of the airplane.
Yeah. And I had to do a PLF, parachute landing fall, yes. And it hurt. But I was still drinking more because I didn't have many responsibilities.
Do you have any plan for what you were going to do as a civilian?
So what I decided was, I want to ignore the fact that I'm drinking too much and be like, that's not the problem. That's not the problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just too stressed out, this whole career thing. So I'm going to take 6 months. And then after 6 months, I'm going to pursue a job. So 6 months comes and goes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to need another 6 months. And so I take another 6 months and I'm like, you know what? I don't really feel like going back to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply for this MBA program, the Masters of Business for Veterans at USC. A few of my friends have done it. And so I'm going to throw that against the wall and see if it sticks. And so if I get accepted to this, then great, I'll go do that. If I don't get accepted, then I'm going to look for a job just to do something to be productive. And I got accepted to the program. So I go into the program and it is the most professional civilian experience that I've ever had. It's a beautiful campus. Everybody in the classroom is a professional, from the faculty to the directors to the students that you're surrounded with. You're surrounded by a bunch of veterans. They're all professionals. And I'm looking around like, boy, I am out of my league here. And that's one of the first things they talk to you about on the first weekend, orientation weekend, is like, the imposter syndrome. They talk about all that stuff. And it's like, no, that's not the case. We're all in this together. This master's program is we're all in this, such a great experience. And we all kind of fed off of each other and made some really great friends that I think I'll continue to carry through for the rest of my life, hopefully. But the experiences were incredible. And it was very, I'm still kind of shaky throughout that. And that was in 2022, graduated in 23. It was still kind of shaky because I was still not at my best. Relationship was on the rocks, still drinking too much. And it's not easy. It wasn't all kumbaya. This is a master's program, at the best, the most expensive school in California. This is no joke. And it was a great experience. It was something to give me some sort of meaning, right? That I needed, and I still do. Men need to be needed.
But equal to that, though, if I'm understanding correctly, in a weird way, signing up for this was just another 6 months. And I put it in air quotes. It was just something else to put off actually accepting a responsibility. Yeah, it's a very difficult, demanding program, but you didn't have an end goal at the end of it. It was just the next thing to take up the 6 months.
Yeah.
When you started, at least.
If you look at any Masters of Business program, there's generally a field to which you're being vectored, whether it's project management or whatever. In this particular, the MBV program is generally vectored towards entrepreneurship. I didn't even know that until I started it. I don't have any desire to be an entrepreneur really at the time. But I didn't even really know that. I just wanted to go do this, to go do something hard. And I wanted to go be around some good people doing it. But yeah, you're right. It was just like, okay, I'm going to go do this, kind of putting this off. But I also at the same time knew that this is not going to be a waste of time or effort or energy. Not only are you going to have this diploma, you're going to end this experience. You're going to end these skills. You're going to have a network that is unrivaled across the country for the next thing, for you to do the next thing. And so I knew all that kind of going into it. And it served that purpose. It continues to. And I, graduate in May of 2023. And like I said, I thought I'd get a job shortly after that, but I didn't. And here we are. So what I've kind of focused on doing is And what I was doing at the time, even, and then thereafter, was talking to guys and gals, friends, people whom I knew that were transitioning, and being like, hey, before you do this, because this is how. So I kind of, similar to what a lot of your guests and what you've done, it's like, hey, here's some of the pitfalls that you're going to run into. Here's some of the things that you could do better than I did. Or, hey, did you know about this VA program? Did you know that you can get this, allotment towards whatever per year, talk about Chapter 32 considerations for GI Bill considerations, all that stuff, how to submit your VA claim and stuff. And I was doing a lot of that. And through the Honor Foundation, which I attended directly after I retired, well, after my retirement ceremony, I did participate in the Honor Foundation. The Honor Foundation, between the Honor Foundation and USC, there's a lot of connecting tissue there between people who have done that and done both programs, and people who are in the business sector in Southern California who understand both of those programs and see the value in both of them. And I've never been one to network. I never was a networker before the Honor Foundation. Let's call it what it is. And they kind of force you into that. And they kind of force you to go get the cups of coffee and to reach out, to do things that are uncomfortable for you to do, things that you haven't had to do for the past 20 plus, however many years.
Take the Ohio State assignment.
Yeah. Go kicking and screaming and go do this and watch what happens to your life.
Yep.
Right. And so
in a weird way, if I'm interpreting it correctly, did between the USC program and the Honor Foundation, instead of narrowing your aperture and giving you a specific focus, did it widen your aperture to opportunities and ideas that maybe you weren't even thinking about before?
Yes, it did. But I still don't know, and they're going to kill me. The Honor Foundation starts day one or week one start with your why, right? And to find out what your new why is. And so, okay, you've done this for X amount of time. What's going to be your new why? And I was struggling. I was in such a bad spot internally that I didn't know what my next why was going to be. I really didn't feel useful internally to begin with for myself. How could I be useful for anybody else? And it's kind of crazy, but I still haven't figured out what that why is.
And when I use that analogy, I wasn't saying it from a negative perspective. It's actually, in a weird way, a positive, in that instead of dialing you in to a specific vector, like you mentioned, what it did was it opened your view so wide that you're now got, and I don't mean this the way it sounds, but you've got too many opportunities because you're now you pull the blinders off, and maybe you're not looking so narrow, just like,
Yeah, and that's uncomfortable. Yes.
What do they say? Too many options sometimes is bad as not having any options.
That's right. So what I kind of have found is that where I need to feel useful, but if I can do something to help somebody else, like I talked about earlier, provide that umbrella or to make that connection with this person to this person, and then we can make magic happen. If I can do something like that, then that makes me feel useful. It makes me feel good. If I can be somebody who can give you left and right lateral limits or provide an environment in which you can thrive, and I can just be a distant observer, I don't need to be part of it, that does something for me. I enjoy seeing that. If there's some piece of advice that I can give you, if there's something that you're really struggling with, if you're getting out, if you're a vet, I don't even care if you're a veteran, but like, if there's anything I can do to help, and I tell this to everybody that I ever talk, hey, let me know if I can do something for you. I said a lot. Yeah, okay. No, I mean it. I mean it. Tell me what I can do for you because it feeds me. It feeds my soul, and it makes me feel useful. And so if I can, get out there on the golf course wearing, a Hooli hat, shameless plug for Bobby Holland, and tell people, hey, yeah, you don't recognize that, do you? Well, look at this website, check this guy out and look at what he's doing. If I can talk to somebody, I played golf several weeks ago with a civilian who's from the Midwest, who's kind of in the entrepreneur space, and he's effectively telling me that he's requires some coaching and stuff. And I'm like, have you ever heard of Ty Smith? And I give him a few other options because I know he's a LinkedIn guy. Hey, look this guy up. If there's something that I can do to, connect somebody, especially in Southern California, but it doesn't need to be in Southern California. But if there's anybody who's interested in that space, post-military service, post-federal service, post-civilian career, I don't care. If there's anything that I can do, I want to be of help. If you're in the special operations community and you're transitioning, and I think you already know this, but you need to look up the Honor Foundation and you need to apply for the Honor Foundation. I think they have 10 or 11 campuses now. When I went through, I think there was just in San Diego. There may have been one other. Todd Stevens has done some amazing work with that. And along with what they've done to expand the Honor Foundation is they've come up with what's called the Vector Accelerator. I don't know if you've heard of that, but Vector Accelerator is a supplement to the federally mandated transitioning programs that are imposed upon, the services for folks that are transitioning out. Well, you go do your federally mandated stuff, and it's great. It serves its own purpose. But then if you really want to put that into action, you can do a self-paced program called the Vector Accelerator that I'll just say look it up. I'm not going to go into specifics only because I haven't personally done it myself. I did the Honor Foundation. This is the Vector Accelerators for folks who were not necessarily part of special operations, but want to do kind of a self-paced thing on their own that's virtual. That is incredible. It's an incredible networking tool. Those kind of one-dimensional things that they teach you during your federally mandated training as you're getting out, they make it three-dimensional for you. And they provide opportunities for you to do it in real life and the networking things. So highest possible recommendation for that.
I think the thing that's, an odd way, where you talk about you were never a networking guy. It was never about who I am. And what I'm thinking about is young man, young woman coming towards their transition. And like many previous and many that are going to come after them, you don't know what you want to do afterwards. And then you further insulate yourself by, well, I'm not going to reach out to anybody because I don't know what I want to do. That's when you should almost dive into it more and put yourself in front of and around more people, because you never know that one conversation that's going to open your aperture to an idea or an opportunity you were never even thinking of. But I think what a lot of us do, you made the analogy. I've told a lot of people, hey, reach out to me. How can I help you? But you bring it back to the individual. If they don't know where they want to get to, they don't know what questions to ask. So there's this apprehension of reaching out and networking because I don't know what I can network to. But I'm saying that's when you need to dive deeper into networking, because you never know. Like you mentioned, I was playing golf with a guy and he mentioned he needed something. You never know where those conversations and opportunities are going to come from. And the more times that you put yourself out there, the more, what they say, something to the effect of gambling. You lose more times when you don't gamble, in essence. If you never put your chips on the table, you're never going to win.
That's right. You can't win if you don't play.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're, have a conversation with somebody. Hey, you like sourdough? Have you heard of this coastal crap? It's kind of giving Kevin a shout out there, but, I think you're spot on, and hopefully that resonates with some people, and that's why the Honor Foundation and a few other transition entities, they really force this cup of coffee thing on you because it's like, well, I don't know this guy. What am I going to, or this gal, what am I going to talk about? Reach out to an industry that I think the USC program, I think, does this. It's like, reach out to somebody in an industry you're not even interested in and just go talk to this person.
I would say boil it even smaller than that. Reach out to somebody like you. Before you commit to any program, just go talk to somebody who's already transitioned.
Yep.
And get their 2 cents on what direction they went. Not necessarily because you want them to tell you, hey, go do this. Just talk to them about them, what they did, what their transition was like. And then they may tell you, hey, did you hear about this MBV program at USC? Did you hear about? But again, it's that thing of, you don't have to start big. Start small. Reach out to somebody you used to work with who's been out for 2 or 3 years. You probably haven't talked to them. More than likely, your train kept going 100 miles an hour and they became a side note. Reach out to them. Hey, how you been? What's civilian life been like for you? Start small.
Chances are that person is going to really appreciate the fact that you reached out to him or her.
Yes.
Nobody's going to be like, who's this guy or gal? They're going to appreciate it. I know I would. So, and I have had that opportunity and I gobble it up. I love getting messages from folks going through the Honor Foundation. You can always tell when the Honor Foundation picks up a new class or when USC picks up a new class because you get this flood of invites or requests from LinkedIn, and it's fun. It's like, this is great. Yeah, sure. I'll be your cup of coffee. I enjoy doing that stuff, And if I don't know, if you have a specific direction that you want to go, I may not know that, but I guarantee you I know somebody who does. I guarantee it. Like, try me. Challenge me.
I was just going to say, give me a challenge.
Yeah, please. I need it.
What do you think your future is 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? Have you even thought about it yet?
I think about it all the time, but it's still vague. It's still hazy, but you know what? I just want to, I think I want to continue to work on myself and continue to be the best, to learn what the best possible version of myself looks like. Because I haven't seen it yet. Everything that I've done in my adult life, I still haven't seen the best possible version of myself. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I know I can do better. So if I continue to do better, I think that opportunities and what is next will be presented to me, meaning it will be shown to me. It won't be presented to me or given to me. It will be shown to me to go get it. And so that's kind of a vague answer to your question, but I don't know exactly. I'm going to go do whatever's presented, whatever's shown to me to go get it. And hopefully that helps people. Hopefully that makes people's lives a little bit easier, makes me feel a little useful. That's what it's kind of a bland answer, but that's kind of where I am right now. Maybe that thing will come when you least expect it. And that's what I think.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking your time to share your story. And I do wish you all the best in finding that journey, that path, wherever it's going to take you.
Well, thank you very much. And this is an incredible opportunity. Like I said, anybody, Southern California area or not, if there's anything I can do for you, reach out to me. LinkedIn, hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'd be more than happy to meet with you or to talk or whatever you need.
Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do 2 things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask. Please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.